Today we're going to look at the Blackmagic Video Assist 12G HDR 7-inch monitor. Now, what is the Blackmagic Video Assist 12G HDR monitor? For those that aren't aware, you can hook this up to your camera, and then this way you'll be able to record in different codecs. Now, normally if you record straight into the camera using the SD cards that you insert, it's highly compressed footage. A lot of them have high bit rates, but even then, just to save space, these files are extremely compressed. So if you want to bring them into your editor later and start adjusting a couple items, mostly with color and contrast, you might start noticing compression artifacts. So this way you're able to record to more robust codecs and codecs that are actually better for editing, in the sense that regardless of which editor you're using, you'll be able to play through these easier while you're editing. And the reason for that is because they're not heavily compressed, so that's one less thing that the system has to do. Another added benefit of recording to a monitor is that you can bypass the time limits that you generally get with a lot of cameras. So not only with bypassing that limit and recording to much better codecs, but you're also able to view your footage on a high dynamic range screen. Now there's both a 5-inch and a 7-inch version of this monitor, and today we're going to talk about the 7-inch. The 5-inch is a little bit smaller, of course, and has fewer ports. In fact, some of the ports are missing on the 5-inch. On the left-hand side near the top, you can see the XLR ports. In the middle there, we have the SDI in and out. And near the bottom, we have the HDMI in and we have the HDMI out. And which one of those ports that you use is primarily dependent on which kind of camera that you have or that you're using. On the back of the monitor, you can see where you attach the two Sony NP970 batteries, and in between them you can see the fan, which helps keep everything cool and keeps the temperature down. And another great feature of the monitor is that you can check the level of the batteries on the front. You click on the icon for the two batteries and it will tell you which percentage each battery is. Of course, you don't need to use the batteries. It comes with included AC power, and you can actually use both in conjunction, so that this way, even if it's plugged into AC power, it will be charging your batteries at the same time. And along those lines, you can click on the AC icon across the top, which indicates that it's using plugged in power, and you can check the battery levels there also. On the right hand side of the monitor, you have the power button at the top. Beneath that is the port for the link. Beneath that is the headphone jack, two SD card slots, and at the bottom, that is where you would plug in the AC power. Across the top, you have 3/4 20 ports, and you can either use those for mounting, or if you wanted to connect something to the monitor, you obviously could do that here. Removing the batteries is pretty straightforward and easy. You just press the button across the top, and then it comes out. Now, not only do we have the 3/4 20 ports on the top, if we flip over the monitor, we have another 3 across the bottom. In addition to that, there's actually a USB-C connector, and you can hook up a small drive if you want to send out your media that way, using something like the Samsung portable SSDs. Another great feature of this monitor is that it has a tally light. This way you know that it's actually recording without even needing to look at the screen. There's a little light across the top. Once you start recording, that light will turn on and you'll know that you're actually recording something. So looking across the top, we can see the codec that we're filming in. We can see the format, in this case 1080p, and 60 frames per second, how long we've been recording, the source that it's coming from, and our other options, which we'll address in a little bit. The format that you record to is all dependent on your camera. So in other words, if your camera can't export 4K, you won't be able to see 4K across the top either, and it won't be selectable in the menu. If we go into the menus, you can see the different type of inputs that we have and the different codecs that we can use. We have DNx HR, ProRes, and Blackmagic Raw. If I go into Blackmagic Raw and I attempt to record something, you can see how the screen goes black because the camera that I'm using doesn't support the Blackmagic Raw. ProRes, you can see the different types that we have. Same thing with DNx HR. We have the SQ, the LB, and all the other different types that you're able to record to using this monitor. The next screen, you can see the option for trigger record, the different audio channels, 2, 4, 8, and 16. If the card drops a frame, it will either let you know or just stop recording, and here you can choose an option to actually apply the LUT in the file. Now, if you are using a camera that has Blackmagic Raw, you can see the different options you have here. You have the constant quality, and you can also use the constant bitrate and the different compressions that you have there, 3:1, 5:1, 8:1. I actually did a video about that, and I will link that in the description below. If we click on monitor, you can see the different options that we have here. Let's go ahead and choose false color, get out of the menu, and now you'll notice what happened to the image. For example, the darkest parts of the image are colored in blue. If we go back to the menu and choose focus assist, this is similar to focus peaking on different cameras. You'll notice that anything that is high contrast and in focus is green. Now we can come in here and actually make an adjustment to that. If we prefer to not use green and choose, let's say red for example, and we were to exit the menu and go back to the footage, you'll notice because our eyes are in focus, now they're showing red. A couple other things I can show you. Let's go ahead and turn off the focus assist. And now we're going to turn on the frame guides and the grid. Here you can see the dark areas which are outside of the frame, and then the grid across the screen there, which you can use to implement the rule of thirds. Now if we turn those two off and then choose the option for blue only, this will only show the blue channel, and this is great for cases where you want to see how much noise is in your image, because it mostly lives in that blue channel. We can turn that off now, go across the top to the audio screen. Here you can see we can use the audio coming from the video in both an XLR mic or the XLR line connection. Obviously you can adjust the gain right there on the screen. And across the bottom you can see the options to toggle on the phantom power for those particular mics that need them. Now on the first screen of the setup menu, you can see that tally light LED on the bottom left there, which is what I referenced before, but you can also adjust the screen brightness, which is on the left hand side, either low, medium, or high. The next screen is all your options for timecode. I won't go into too much detail here, but this is where you would go to adjust everything. This next screen is pretty much self-explanatory if you just read the options there. One is the file name prefix, and this is any file that you record will have this preceding the name. So this way when you pull the card, if it was to have other items on there, you'll know which came from this recorder. In this case, I'll just type in Dave, and now any files that I record through the monitor will have Dave at the beginning. The last screen has to do with LUTs, and a lot of these have to do with flat footage being transformed into more contrasty footage, where you have vlog, for example, being transported to 709. Now these are mostly display LUTs, that way you can visualize what it's going to look like as a finished product, unless you chose the option that we mentioned before, where it actually burns the LUT into the file. Now instead of going to the menu in the top right, if we were to swipe from the left, we'll see what is basically our virtual slate. Across the bottom you can see we can indicate whether it's an interior or exterior shot, during the day, at night, which scene it is, which take it is. And this is all embedded into the file, so that way when you bring it back into Resolve, you'll be able to tell which file is which. If we go across the top into the project panel, we can of course just give it a name. If this was for a wedding, let's say, we could just go ahead and type in wedding. And then we can type in the lens data too, so that way we can reference what we used. So let's say for this particular shot, instead of the 50mm, we actually used a 24mm. We can go ahead and choose the button right there and hit update, and everything's in place. Formatting a card is pretty straightforward. You click where it says format across the bottom. It will highlight which card needs to be formatted, and then obviously you click on that button to say format card to. Here you can choose OS X Extended or exFAT for Windows. You can name the file, and in this case I'll also call this Dave because it's such an amazing name. Click on Update and then click Format Card. It will confirm everything with you. Go ahead and click the button again, and just to make sure, it's going to have you hold the button for 3 seconds as it indicates here, and then finally the card is formatted, which I think is a great feature because this way you're not accidentally deleting stuff off of your cards. Click OK, and it tells you how much time you have left on the card. In this particular case, it's only 32 gigabytes, which is why it says 9 minutes. Plus, it all depends on which format you're trying to record with. Now, in order to actually start recording, you just hit the red record circle at the bottom there, and you can see which card is being recorded across the bottom because it's indicated by the red, and across the top is how long it's been recorded. Now, back in the monitor menu, we have an option called Zebras, and this is something that will highlight the brightest parts of your footage. It's kind of hard to see here because it's across the bottom. The lights are the brightest parts, and you can see how they're being highlighted with those stripes, which is why it's called the zebra. To clear that bottom menu, all I did was swipe down. I'll go back into the menu, turn off the zebra tool, and if we go back, we can see the footage as it normally is. So if we click on that icon near the top right, the first option there will be the video, which is basically just the video feed coming into your monitor. Next is a waveform, which is the brightest parts at the top, darkest parts at the bottom, and everything in the image left to right as you see it. The parade, which is the RGB parade, showing essentially the same thing but separated into the red, green, and blue channels. The vector scope, which shows the color distribution but also the saturation. Anything closer to the outside of what is essentially a circle is more saturated. Anything closer to the center is not saturated. And then the last one being the histogram, which is basically a distribution of the brightness ranges, with the left being the darkest and the right hand side being the brightest. If we click the small button in the top right hand corner, then we get a small window showing the actual video and the scope behind it. The other option we have is to choose the cogwheel in the bottom left hand corner, and we can choose the scope brightness. That way we can still view the footage and the scope at the same time, but we can lower the opacity so that the scope isn't overlaying too much over the footage. Along those lines, we can also adjust the background opacity, so if we slide it all the way to the right, our background footage disappears. Of course, if we want to bring it back, click on the cogwheel and slide the background opacity back to the left. And the last thing I'm going to show you guys is how to apply those LUTs. So here we have some flat footage recorded from a Blackmagic camera. Now in order to add a LUT, we go up to the menu option in the top right hand corner, choose the one that we need, come back to the monitor screen, choose Display 3D LUT, and then we have our LUT displayed. And now let's look at a little side by side. The one on the left being the footage without the LUT applied, and of course on the right with the LUT applied. As always, thanks for watching, guys. If you have any questions about this monitor that I haven't addressed in this video, go ahead and leave a question in the description below. I would love it if you guys subscribed to the channel and became a part of the community. All my links are in the description below. If you wanted to purchase one or read up on some more details, that's also in the description below. And I'll see you guys in the next video.